Wait for a few people to log in. Okay. And now it looks like we are live on YouTube as well. Okay. So there we go. Just going to make sure that everything's in order. Hello, everybody. So my name is Peter Jansen. I'm a coach. I specialize in emotional intelligence and in the development of leadership through emotional intelligence. Today, we are going to talk about being present. Now, we've heard this term of being present many, many times. And, people are telling us you need to live in the moment, be in the now, stay present, live in the present. What does this really mean? Where does it come from? How is this going to help us? What are the benefits? What are the pitfalls? What's really all this about? Okay, so we're going to start exploring this a little bit. Just a quick word here before we continue. Sometimes I have trouble reading my feed, so if you're sending me a message or something, just be patient with me, okay? All right, so both in YouTube and in Facebook, can't really see my feed for some reason. Okay, now, if there's anything that you wanted to ask, write it down. I will get to it eventually, okay? And of course, feel free to visit my website whenever you want. It's www.coachjansen.com/en. All right, so being present. Being present is basically a state. It's a state of being, a state of mind, a state of just an emotional state as well. It means that we are focused and concentrate on what is happening in this precise moment in time. And in order to explain this a little bit further, I'm going to explain to you how emotions work. Every emotion has to have three focuses. So you have a physiological focus, you have the linguistic focus, and you have the mental focus. This is very important. It's important to keep it in mind. Without this, the emotion just doesn't quite stick. It doesn't persist. So the physiological focus is highly important because it is the first experience that we have in life. It's physiological. We come out of our mothers and we experience all of a sudden all this physical stimuli all over, and it's important to understand this because this is when we first start developing who we are. Our experience of life through our senses. So our first experience is always physiological. Now, the mental part is what we're going to be focused on right now for quite a bit. And the linguistic part, well, we'll focus on that a little further on. The key thing is that in order to be truly present, we need to make sure that all these three parts of our emotions are in line to this present, to this here, and to this now. Okay. Now, how does this work? How does our mind work? And how do I feel it? And I'd like to hear from you about this as well. How do we feel it in our life experience? Look, it's very simple. The brain holds a certain amount of information. Now, how much information does it really hold? This is an interesting question. Well, studies have shown that it holds approximately 2 terabytes. Now, that's not a whole lot of information, considering that's about the size of my iTunes library, more or less, okay? Considering that it's about the size of my drone footage after about a couple of weeks of flying. It's not a tremendous amount of information. I mean, especially considering that, we have so much information coming in through our eyes, through our ears, through every single one of our senses. We have so much information coming through every single second. There's a tremendous amount of data that we need to filter through. And there's a tremendous amount of processes as well. So how do we manage these processes? What's happening? Is all that in our brain? Okay, I don't like to look at the brain as having a limited capacity. I really don't believe that's the case. I like to look at the brain more than a hard drive. I like to look at it as a modem or a router. Yeah. What does this basically mean? It basically means that our brain is the buffer of all the information that's coming into it. And everything that's out there, everything else is mined. Now, bear with me. I know might get a little bit metaphysical here, and those of you who know me know that I am not very metaphysical, even though I know quite a few metaphysical concepts. But just think about it. If our mind is capable of so much, then why do we only have a hard drive that is so limited? This is why it's important to remain present. So we don't have to be accessing data from the past, from the future, from perceptions, we need to make sure that the data that we are having in this little buffer here that we call brain is as present as possible, as accurate as possible, as clean as possible. I was having drinks with some friends of ours. They're also coaches, and it was very interesting. We were talking about all this being present situation, but we were also discussing a few other bits and pieces that I find extremely interesting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I consider to be the left and the right of time. See, we can focus our mind in the now through certain physiological practices. Like, for example, we can meditate, we can breathe, and we can do things like, for example, we have a little Zen garden. You can do a little bit of Zen gardening, and that's fantastic to remain present. Intentionality is about being present. When you do things with intention, when you sit down to have a meal and you have no distractions around you, when you have no conversation, when you have no screens, no television, no radio, no sounds, no MP3s, no streaming music, no noises around you, no dogs barking. When you're just sitting down to eat and you are enjoying every single bite of food, you're enjoying the taste of your food. Every second you are being present. That is very important because the here and the now is the only thing that exists. So it's okay to look at the left of time so that you can learn lessons from the past. It's really okay. And it's okay to look at the right of time so you can plan ahead. But it all funnels down. It funnels down into the present. I'd like you to think about that for a little bit. The present is not just mental. It's not just physiological. Time is a mental construct. The present is all there is. The past has gone, and it's just a collection of memories which have already been through this buffer, have already been released from this buffer, and now we're just only accessing it. And we're accessing it in the way that we find most useful. Does this mean that we're accessing it in an accurate form? Well, I don't think so. because two people can have exactly the same experience at exactly the same time of exactly the same event, yet have completely different recollections 5 minutes later, 20 minutes later, and then a year later, you get them together again, their recollection is going to be completely different. You know, just a few days ago, I was with my sister, my wife, and my father. And we were having a conversation, and we started recalling things of when my sister and I were kids. My father recalled a completely different situation than what my sister did. And I recalled a completely different situation than what my father and my sister. So three people going through the same situation, looking at it at the same moment in time, years down the line, have completely different perspectives of what happened. Why? Because it's already been through the buffer. Whatever was useful was stored in a useful place, and then the rest was let go. And we're accessing it, and we're accessing it creatively, let's say. So we're looking at the left of time, but that left of time has already been and gone, and now it's just a perception, and it's completely subjective. There's no objectivity to it whatsoever. Three people come up with three completely different recollections of the situation. It's interesting. Ask anyone what they remember of the day of 9/11, for example. That's a great example. You'll see that most people will know exactly where they were and what they were doing, whether they were in the US or they were in any other country. You know, a lot of people will tell you what they were doing exactly. But a lot of people who were with them will tell you a similar but different story. Yeah. I recall what started a really interesting conspiracy theory was that George W. Bush was asked what he remembered about the whole situation, and he was saying something that he along the lines of, and this is just me recalling what I've read and what I've heard, but along the lines of I was doing some exercise or something like that, and or I was working on something, and then it was on the TV, and I saw the first plane crash. And soon after, some people came in and told me that America's under attack. Well, the reality was that that never actually really truly happened because there was no video at that time. So he couldn't have been watching it. So this basically started to make people think that there was a conspiracy, and he was actually watching the video because the agents that were sent to create this destruction were people who were filming it, and he was watching it while it was happening. I really don't believe that. I think it's just that his recollection of the past got a little bit confused, just a little bit confused, like it will do with any other human beings, with what other bombardment of information came into his mind. So when we are recalling, we're looking at the past of time or the left of time. It's not a perfect recall in most cases. Yeah, sure, there are people who have photographic memory. Yeah, sure, there's people who can recall 100% of pretty much everything. But in most cases, we're not like that. We don't recall 100% of everything. We can't even recall 5% of most things in a good day, in a completely objective way. It just doesn't happen. So, it's interesting to look at the left of time because you consider this, and I know I've spoken about this before, but there have been many studies from universities who study the quantity of thoughts a person can have on average in a day, and it varies from 60 to 90,000 thoughts. Those thoughts occur in the present, but their focus is displaced, right? Interestingly enough, those thoughts that happen in the present whose focus is displaced, if you look at how many of them are the same thoughts as the day before, it's 93%. So today, you are going to have between 60 and 90,000 thoughts, out of which 93% are going to be exactly the same thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before that. And tomorrow's thoughts are going to be 93% the same thoughts as you've had today, but they are displaced in time. Now, this is very curious. I don't know how to quite explain that phenomenon yet, but I am studying it. But I do believe that it is an important thing to remember, because if we're thinking the same thing as we were thinking yesterday, then we're not really truly in the now, are we? So 93% of the time, we're not in the now. And then, of course, there's a lot of percentage of the time that we're, shifting to the future. So what is it that we're doing right and what is it that we're doing wrong? At what point are we focusing our mind in the now? I can tell you there are some tricks, there are some tips, and I will show you some of these things today, here, now. It's not going to be an issue. It's going to be easy tips, easy tricks. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you access to some amazing technology that will help you be in the present. Okay, so look at the left of time. And with that focus of the left of time, you learn lessons. And this is okay. This is all good. But if you stay there, then your emotions are going to shift as well. Now, I'm going to give you a list of 6 emotions. These 6 emotions are the 6 universal emotions, which basically means every single human being, no matter what religion or no matter what culture, where geographically they're from, or what ethnicity they're from, have. Okay, 6. Just 6. These were studied by a Dr. Paul Ekman, and then after that by Dr. David Matsumoto. Now, Dr. Paul Ekman has dedicated his entire life, his entire professional life, to the understanding of human emotion, and he developed a system called FACS, Facial Action Coding System. It's a fantastic system that is currently being used in a lot of security agencies, and in law enforcement for deceit detection. Now, these 6 emotions are sadness, rage, contempt, disgust, joy, and fear. All of them have a positive reason for existing. Yeah. So I don't like to focus on whether an emotion is positive or an emotion is negative. I like to focus. They're all useful, and they're useful for a positive thing. Now, the focus you can give it, and if you remain in one specific emotion through an X amount of time, can actually be negative. Okay. So most people will consider, out of those 6, there's only one positive, joy. No, I'm sorry, but fear can be very, very positive sometimes because it can help you survive. As can be rage, as can be sadness, disgust. Disgust can save your life because you simply might feel disgusted by something you're about to eat, and might save your life, might save you from being poisoned, Contempt, even contempt can be a positive thing for you to have. We are human beings with a full range of emotions, and we should be able to access the full range of emotions. Now, let me tell you, there aren't only these 6 emotions. But out of these 6 emotions, we can pretty much mix and match and create hundreds. Okay? I'm not going to get into that now. But what I will say is this. The only emotion which lives in the present is joy. It's the only one. Now, a great way to feel joy, gratitude. Impossible to feel anything but joy, gratitude. You can't feel anything negative when you're being grateful. And being grateful helps you be present because you are bringing into the now everything you've got and all your possibilities. You're bringing them into the now, and you are proactively bringing thought into it. And with that thought and that mental talk, that self-talk, you will have the mind aspect of our emotion, the linguistic aspect of emotion, and you will have that release, which is also physiological. So you will have the three focuses that you require in order for an emotion to exist and to persist. So at that moment, you are present. You're very present. Okay. So in the past, the further to the left of time you look, the closer you will get to sadness. Then a little bit closer to the present, but still in the past, you'll have rage. And closer to the present, but still in the past, you'll have contempt. And then very close to the present, but still a little bit in the past, you'll have disgust. Disgust is pretty much a reaction. But for that reaction to happen, you must have a stimulus, okay? So a stimulus, reaction, reaction equals disgust, boom, it's pretty immediate, okay? So, but it's still in the past. So in the present, we have joy. And in the future, we have fear. We cannot fear something from the past. We will always fear it in the future, okay? So this is where all the fears we spoke about last week, this is where they will live in the future, okay? So you can look at the left of time to learn lessons, just don't hang in it for too long. You can look at the right of time to plan, just don't be there for too long. But let your heart be still in the here, in the now. You must be present. I'm going to go into something that's a little more scientific here. I'm going to go into a little bit of physics. This is, I'm going to talk about Schumann's resonance. So what is Schumann's resonance? Schumann's resonance is basically the sum of all the frequencies that occur on Earth, on Earth's surface, okay? Mostly it is a function of the electromagnetic field in the magnetosphere and the thunderstorms that we have around planet Earth, which we have about, I think it's about 2,000 on average at any one point in time. So it's a lot of thunderstorms, but this maintains Schumann's resonance. Now, what does this mean and why am I mentioning it? It is the frequency of planet Earth. Some people call it the heartbeat of planet Earth. I think that is inaccurate. It's more like the pulse of the surface of the planet. And it changes through time. Every single stellar body has a different Schumann's resonance. In our case, planet Earth, it's about 7.83 hertz. And of course, it's got different harmonics as well. Now, the thing with Schumann's resonance is very interesting. I'm going to go back in time here, and I'm going to talk to you about the meditation processes of the past and present in places like Tibet. So at some point, it occurred to somebody to create singing bowls. You know, the ones that you just make that you hold and you make the sound with the stick, or the bells. I actually have one of those. You just make the sound and it creates this resonance. Funny enough, in most cases, it's pretty close to 8 hertz, which is very close to Schumann's resonance. And it really is very grounding. Now, what do we mean by grounding? It brings us down to Earth. Interesting. The frequency of the surface of the Earth is grounding. It's cool. I like the fact that somebody came up with the word grounding, and it all relates quite nicely. Now, the reason that we have this frequency is because there's a difference in a handmade bowl between one side and the other, and one side will resonate at one frequency, the other side will resonate in another, and whatever those two frequencies encounter will create a beat, and the beat is about 8 hertz. This is what's interesting about it. So you go back in time, think about the stories of whoever invented that, and we're still using it today for meditation. Shows us that, we already had that technology way, way, way before we even knew about Schumann's resonance. We didn't really only start learning about Schumann's resonance after a German, Dr. Schumann, discovered this, and I think it was in 1959. But this singing bowls and this meditating bells and all this Tibetan bells and stuff, they've existed for much longer than that. So it's interesting. We've used grounding techniques for a very, very, very long time. Now, what's important about Schumann's resonance is also in a range of frequencies we call alpha. It's really important frequencies for creativity in our brain. Yeah, how does this work? Inside our brain, we have the olivary complex. It's called that because we have two things about the size of olives that reside within our brain, and they control what we call binaural location. This basically means that if I do this and close my eyes, I know through binaural location, more or less, the location of the sound. Now, this is a survival thing. This is something that we've had to have through evolution, through all our time, because we need to know when a baby's crying where it's coming from. We need to know if a lion's coming, where it's coming from. Yeah, simple survival. But this allows us to find things in space without the use of our eyes. Now, through our ears, we can actually change the vibration of our brain through the olivary complex. So there is actually a way. This is why the singing bowls actually work. It creates what we call a binaural beat. And this binaural beat will bring us back down to alpha. And at that point, we are at a state where we can meditate quite nicely. We can be very creative and so on. We're not very alert. Yeah, we need to be in different states to be alert, but it's about it. Now, if we go a little bit higher in frequency to about 13 hertz, we leave alpha, we go into beta, and then we start the stress frequencies. Now, this is also very important to understand, because when you're in a stress frequency, time seems to go a little bit faster. There is a function of time related to Schumann's resonance, and this basically tells us that when Schumann's changes, so does time, or at least the perception that we have of it. So, of course, if we are at 7.83 hertz, or if we are at whatever Schumann's is at that point in time on planet Earth, as long as it's below 13, we are being grounded and we are present. Yeah? It's important to know this. Believe me, it's important to know this. I'm going to give you access to that technology later for free, but it is important to know this. Now, there are a few bodies who monitor Schumann's around the world. One of them is the U.S. Navy, because they need to monitor very low frequencies for communication purposes with the submarines, of course. So we know this is a frequency that is quite real if the armed forces are actually using it to monitor communications. Another thing is, when cosmonauts and astronauts went up into space, they were getting sick. They were getting space dementia. They were getting neurological problems and so on and so forth. Now, whilst the Russians developed nootropic drugs, which were very, very beneficial for the as neuroprotectors, to protect the neurology and even to heal some of the effects of space travel. Another thing that they came up with in order to make it easier on the astronauts' bodies and neurology is they came up with a Schumann shield. So basically, a shuttle goes up into space, and this shield that produces 7.83 hertz, a frequency of 7.83 hertz was included in the space shuttle, and this stabilized the astronauts. This is interesting because now we see that it actually has a physiological effect. So if astronauts need this resonance in order to remain in an optimal psychological, mental, neurological, physiological state, if this frequency is used to to monitor even certain communications in very low frequency communications through the armed forces, we know it's pretty real. Now, if this protects our neurology, if this grounds us, and this puts us in the present, it is important that we're able to access this frequency as much as we possibly can. And we can do that through sound, like the Tibetan monks have done for a very long time. And I do it that way as well, but I do it in a more technologically advanced and precise way. But we can do it through other physical interrupts as well, like, for example, meditation, through breathing, through being in contact with the sea, for example, bare feet on the ground. This is a really nice way to remain present, through constant attempts at intentional action. You see, the power of intentionality cannot go amiss if you want to be present. The power of intentionality is great. It is tremendous. It is fantastic. It is awesome. But intentionality only occurs in the present. You cannot be intentional in the future. And you might be intentional in the future, but when you are intentional, it'll be in that present. You cannot be intentional in the past. You would have been intentional in the past, perhaps, but intentionality occurs only in the now. So the more you are used to creating habits that put you into intentional action, the more you're going to be in the present. Now, why don't we want to shift? We don't want to shift because we're not living in the past. We don't want to shift our focus in time because you're not living in the past and you're not living in the future. You're living in the now. At any time you pass thinking about or focusing or living in the past, you are spending it in story time. It's Storyland, it's La La Land, it's Dream World. It's just basically a very processed perception of the memory that you may have created right now of events that have gone through the modem, have been in the buffer, and have gone back out there, and there's just like a trace of it left. Is it accurate? Well, as we see, no. It's a funny thing. I keep on seeing all these shows and on-demand video. I like watching things that have to do with human emotions and of course things that have to do with crimes and with court cases and so on are interesting because they make you understand a few things that are going on in those shows in terms of emotions and so on and so forth. But it is interesting how the mind, when it comes to the past, is so highly inaccurate, yet it is used memory and eyewitness accounts are highly inaccurate, highly inaccurate, because like I said before, two people can, or even 10 people or 100 people or a million people can live through exactly the same situation and have a completely different perception and then memory of it after that. So eyewitness reports and eyewitness is just so inaccurate, and yet it is used to acquit or find somebody guilty of a crime. Interesting. So it is living in the past is just basically a story you keep on telling yourself and it keeps on changing. So imagine that you're reading a book and you loved the book and then you read it again and it changed. And then you read it again, it changed even one more time. And no matter how many times you read it, it just keeps on changing. It's pretty confusing, isn't it? It's pretty confusing. So living in the past is living in storyland. And living in the future is also, living in total anxiety. So if you keep on thinking of things that you will do, when will you actually get to do them? I'll tell you when you get to do things. You get to do things now. I'll tell you when you get to make decisions. You get to make decisions now. Yeah? Do not procrastinate. Procrastination is living in the future. I will get to do it at some point. Why? Do it now. Don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today. And just don't miss the opportunity to act now, to think now. Do you think, when do you think? Do you think in the future? Do you think in the past? No, you think in the now. So why waste the thought that you have in the now in a focus that just completely involves you into the past or completely takes you to the future? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Again, look to the left of time so you can learn from the lessons that life has given you, and look to the right of time so that you can actually plan. But then make sure you funnel it down to the present every single time, because today you're alive in the now. And that's it. Right now is the only moment you've got guaranteed. I thank you very much. I'm very grateful for you, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this recorded, which, by the way, it's only going to stay up for 1 week. I'm very grateful that you decided to spend this time, this part of your life, with me right now. I'm grateful for that. And I hope it is of use to you for every moment that goes into your life from now on. But it is important that you remain in the now. Now, I said I was going to talk about the linguistic focus of the present. How do we focus the mind? A great teacher of mine once told me that the quality of life I lived was going to be directly related to the quality of questions I asked myself. So throughout this past decade, I've been asking myself a great many questions. One of the questions I've asked myself is, why do questions have so much power over the mind? Well, that is because questions have a way to focus it. Now, when you ask yourself a question, your mind focuses on the question, and then now if the right question is asked correctly. Let me give you an example of an incorrect question. Why is this happening to me? So then you focus on what happened, and that's a little bit in the past. You ask, why is this happening to me? You focus in the past. And your mind is left focused, as in focused to the left of time. So, of course, what emotions live there? Sadness, rage, contempt, disgust, any combination of those, and any also intensities of those. So I'm not saying you're going to have rage and that's it. No, you could be slightly angry. Um, you could be highly disgusted or, slightly put off. There's a variety. You could be completely depressed or, a little bit sad. But it's important to understand that if you ask yourself that sort of question, why me? Why does this happen to me? Why did it happen to me? Why am I the way I am? You're going to be focusing on the past, and therefore you're going to be accessing those four emotions. Again, sadness, rage, contempt, disgust, any combination of those in any intensity. So this is the bad question to ask yourself, okay? Now, if you use the question, how can I use this? Then you're focusing more on the present. You're focusing on a use for whatever is happening to you. It's happening to you right now. And now you're focusing it by asking yourself a question. How can I use this? And you give it intent. Because again, we're talking about intentionality. How can I use this to help others? Or how can I use this to grow? Or how can I use this to make profit? Catch my drift here? It's not so complicated. Okay. Now, if you focus your mind in the future, then you're going to be asking yourself things like, how am I going to make money for next year? You're automatically going to start focusing on fear because you're automatically thinking into the right of time. When you do that, you're fear focused. So bring it back down to the present. Yeah, what can I do now? That's very, very important. Now, let me illustrate the power of questions right now. I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you heard a piece of music and you started thinking, what's the name of that song? What's the name of that song? Yeah? And then, all of a sudden, you stop asking yourself that question consciously, and maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, even a day later, you go, oh my God, I remember How Deep Is Your Love by the Bee Gees, for example. What does this mean? It means that that mind that you have, that is there, has that information, but this buffer that you have here, remember, the brain, the body, it's just the router to the mind, yeah? So that buffer is already focusing on finding that information out there. So that question is taking mental real estate. And all of a sudden you find the answer. Yeah, okay. Do you think that happens spontaneously? Absolutely not. It's never spontaneous. What's happening there is that you focus your mind with a question. What's the name of that song? And your mind starts working on it, boom, 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 subconsciously searching the archives. And then when it finds it, bam, it gives you the answer. Here's another example. You're walking down the street, you see somebody you know. Hey, how's it going? And you think, I know this person from somewhere. I know this person from somewhere. Oh, what's her name? What's her name? What's her name? What's her name? How long does it bother you? How long does it bother that you don't know that person's name? Okay, so you're now shifting your focus into the past. Your mind is going, I need to remember this. And what's happening at that point is that you're starting to get angry at yourself for not remembering that person's name. You get it? Useful? No, not at all. And then all of a sudden you go, yeah, I remember her. Her name was whatever. Okay? You occupied mental real estate to come up with that answer. Mental real estate that you really didn't have to. So if you lived in the now, in the present, and you're focused in this moment right now, the best thing you could have done was, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. What's your name again? And then you won't occupy that real estate anymore. The mental real estate is freed up for other processes. But important, you are present. Okay, so this is how questions can actually focus your mind even if you don't know it, which is why the linguistic focus of the present is important. We need to ask questions. That's the way that we use language to focus ourselves in the present. Okay, be in the now. Use words that reflect the present, not words that reflect the past. I was doesn't really matter. I will be means nothing. You don't know what you will be. You don't know if you're going to be alive in 3 seconds from now. Okay. You don't know if what you remember is a dream or if somebody else is going to remember it different. What's been is been. That's it. It's interesting what happens. I see a lot of people who love to varnish their past instead of building in the present for a great future. So I'm sure you know people like this in the past, and they relive past glory as if it were something so awesome. It's gone. It's been. It's gone. That's it. All it is a distant memory. Yeah. So you need to live in the now, and appreciate what you had then. Be grateful for it. Move on. That's it. If you had it in the past and don't have it now, it's gone. It's absolutely gone. I remember one day I had this really amazingly huge, it was like 1 liter of a very expensive cologne called Acqua di Parma. And I was moving houses, and my good friend Tim was with me, and we both love our colognes. And next thing you know, it fell to the ground. It just smashed into pieces. And okay, well, yeah, the flat I was leaving was going to smell great for a long, long time, but it was gone. That was it. Yeah, we had to move on from that pretty quick. So I said, okay, well, got to move on from that. No problem. I'm going to go to a much better place right now. It's going to be great. Doesn't matter. Just a thing. But my friend didn't quite let me get away with that, did he? Oh my God, I can't believe you dropped that. Oh, that was so much money right there. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh man, I wanted to cry. He was focusing me back into it. It was a difficult thing to get out of until I realized, you know what, I'm going to focus on the present of the conversation that I'm having with him. And then it was okay, because all of a sudden my loss, which is funny, but my loss of that object, which is completely meaningless, yeah, took on meaning to my friend. And through that, I was able to build a stronger relationship with him because I got to understand him better. I got to ask him questions and, get deeper into our relationship, our friendship, which is great, I appreciate him very, very much. And I always have appreciated him very much. And so that's it. That's it for that story. But it's interesting how if you keep on regretting that which happened, you are going to keep on shifting your focus to the left of time and therefore always accessing sadness, rage, contempt, and disgust. And it's difficult to go into joy from those things. Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. Success in life is not about the things that you were able to acquire and about the things that you're able to accumulate. It's very subjective, but it mostly has to do with your balance between life expectations, what you expect from life, or the blueprint of life, and your experience of it, right? So when you create that balance, that's happiness, and when you build on that happiness, that's success. It's quite simple, quite universal, but what that happiness means to you, that expectation of life and that experience, that's quite subjective. So it's interesting. But if you live in the present, you have that joy. And if you have that joy, you're able to build in the present success. So true success only occurs in the now. Boom. There, that's it. True success only occurs in the now, only occurs in the present. What can I say? It is as simple as that. So it is because of that it is very easy to fail and then learn and try again. Or or to fail and not learn and quit. Both things are equally easy because it's just one simple decision that occurs in the now. The key thing is this: if you fail and learn and change and try again, and fail and learn and change and try again, all you need to do is keep on working on that cycle, and you need to keep on working it in the now, in the present. And if you do that, you eventually will succeed, because you are constantly living in the present and you're finding solutions, finding solutions, finding solutions. You're growing, growing, growing. Now, here's a question: when do you grow? Do you grow in the past? No. Do you grow in the future? No. You grow now. Now. Now is the only time when there's growth. That's it. Okay? So I always say it is expected to go from failure to success, but it is impossible to go from excuse to success. Yeah? Excuse will always focus you on the past. And interestingly enough, the excuses will always be around any of those things, sadness, rage, contempt, and disgust. And you, a lot of the times, shift the responsibility outwards, meaning you shift it away from yourself. Okay? Now, we are talking about leadership and all these things, and you really, a good leader will never, ever, ever really shift responsibility that is truly theirs unto others. It's a huge blind spot. It's a huge downfall, and no leader will ever really truly be a prosperous leader if they have a tendency to shift responsibility. So don't shift responsibility and don't shift your focus in time, because if you do, you're not going to be a good leader. You do need to live in the now. You do need to learn from the experiences in the past and the lessons in the past, and you do need to plan ahead. Yeah, but living in the now. Now is the only time you're going to be able to create empathy. Another key aspect of being a good leader and of emotional intelligence is the creation of empathy, of understanding what other people are going through and putting yourselves in their shoes. This is such a key thing. It is so important. And not a lot of people do it. Okay? So this is why it is important to make sure that you are in the now. The thing about it is that it is the only time where objectivity actually truly can exist. Objectivity is not easy to achieve. Objectivity cannot occur in the past, because if you're looking at past experiences, unless they are scientifically recorded, and if you're doing it through eyewitness or whatever type of presential experience of the past, you're not going to be able to have an accurate, objective perspective. And why? Well, very simply put, because you are remembering. You are creating a story. And that is not objective. Objectivity can only be achieved in the present, and the only way that you can actually achieve objectivity is look at the current situation and extract yourself from the equation. Miyamoto Musashi said that. This is very important. It's very important to be able to do that. And the reason it is important to be able to do that is because only through objectivity can we actually see the bigger picture. Only through objectivity can we actually strategize accurately. Only through objectivity can we lead people. Objectivity takes us away, and this is important too, it takes us away from singular focus. It takes us away from ego. It takes us away from the emotions of the left of time, which are sadness, rage, contempt, and disgust. And it takes us away from fear. It also takes us brings us into the present and away from anxiety, stress. It's interesting because anxiety and stress are not good for you in big doses, but they're all right for you in small ones. And here's the deal. If you are too focused in the future, you will be stressed out. You will release stress hormones. You will eventually end up with adrenal fatigue. You will eventually end up burning out. And how useful is that? Truthfully. So we need to look at the right of time only for planning. If you focus on it, the more you focus on the future, the more you are going to stress out, feel fear, and become anxious. The more of those things are happening to you, the less you're going to be able to focus on the present again. The more you're going to activate your adrenal glands, the more you're going to burn out, the more you're going to be lacking sleep, having nightmares, focusing your mind on negative things, and of course, fear paralyzes. Fear paralyzes a lot. We already spoke last week about different levels of fear and different types of fear. And of course, the more you focus on the future and the further you go into the future, the more you're going to fear things like, for example, old age, poverty, illness, death, loss of love, and criticism. Do you want to really live a life like that? Do you want to live a life where joy is the last thing you're experiencing because you're too focused on the past and you are only experiencing sadness, rage, contempt, and disgust? Or do you really just want to have such a short experience of the present because you're focused so much in the future that you're only experiencing anxiety and fear? So the question is, how are you going to remain present for as long as possible? I'll tell you one thing. When you're with your friends or when you're with your family, are you present? Why do I ask this question? Because I see a lot of kids and parents here at the beach, and they're walking along and they're having fun and they're having a great time and they're being present. And then all of a sudden you see them outside that environment, which is, they're on holiday or they're just enjoying a day out on the beach. And then you see them outside that environment and, the parents are really busy and the kids trying to call their attention and the parents go, no, wait. I'm busy. Don't bother me right now. Let me tell you one thing. The kid is there and right now in the present. And what is really, truly important is that kid, not whatever else is happening around. Because whatever else is happening is not present. If you're worried about your business, there's time to worry about your business. But be present because that child needs you. Be present because at that moment, you are blinding yourself to what is truly important. I have done it. We all have. We take our eye out of what's truly important to what we perceive to be important for the future. The future is now. Right now is the only moment that you get to live. So live. So here's what you're going to do. I want you to go to www.coachjansen.com/en. It is my website. And sign up for my newsletter. And for the first 10 people who sign up for this newsletter, I'm going to give you Schumann's resonance. Now, what does this mean? This means I'm going to give you a frequency, non-commercial frequency that I'm going to allow you to use for the next sort of month. After that month, that frequency will no longer work, but I will allow you to use it for a month, and it's not going to cost you anything. It's just, a little present for me to you, and that will put you in the present. Yeah, you can also, at my website, book a 15-minute strategy session with me. And if you do that, I will not only give you that frequency, but I'll give you some more advice on being present and a few exercises. And for now, just understand one simple thing. It's okay to look at the left of time to learn your lessons. It is okay to look at the right of time and necessary to look at the right of time to plan for your future. But it is essential that you let your heart be still in the present, right here and right now. The past and the future funnel into the present and converge in the now, no matter what. The only way to really live is to live now. So, with that, I am out of time. I am nearly out of breath. And I really enjoyed talking to you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Remember, go to my website, www.coachjansen.com/en. Subscribe to the newsletter. Get your free gift. Join me for a session. Leave a comment. Share this video. Use it. Till then, be present.